Nora Bennett was standing in the middle of my living room with a red lace bra dangling from 2 fingers when she asked the question that nearly ended us before we had ever decided what us meant. "So I'm not the only one, huh?" She said it lightly, almost teasingly, but her eyes had already changed. The warmth I was used to seeing there had pulled back behind something careful. I looked at the bra, then at the sofa, then at the closed hallway door behind which my younger sister was crying so quietly that Nora had no idea she was in the house. There was an explanation. It was innocent. It was also not mine to give. "Nora," I said, "this isn't what it looks like." She gave a small laugh that held no humor. People only say that when it looks exactly like what it is. Before I could find a better sentence, she folded the bra once, set it on the arm of the sofa, and picked up the casserole dish she had come to retrieve. "Forget I asked," she said. I did not forget. Neither did she. Before I tell you how one piece of clothing exposed every weak place in a relationship we had been too afraid to name, take a second to subscribe and tell me in the comments. When someone says, "Trust me," do you need the full truth? Or can love sometimes ask you to wait? My name is Caleb Monroe. I was 30 years old that fall, and I restored old furniture for a living in Richmond, Virginia. Most of my days were spent repairing things other people had decided were too damaged to keep. Split table legs, warped drawers, chairs with loose joints, cabinets scarred by water and neglect. I liked work that made sense. Wood told you where it hurt if you paid attention. People were less cooperative. I lived alone in a narrow blue house on Hawthorne Street, one of 2 small craftsman homes separated by a driveway barely wide enough for a moving truck. Nora lived next door in the yellow house that had belonged to her grandmother. She was 26, exactly 4 years younger than me, and worked as a children's librarian at the East River branch. She could remember the names of 60 children, their favorite books, and which parents needed patience rather than judgment. She also had a habit of leaving mugs on my porch and forgetting them until I returned them filled with coffee. By the time she found the bra, we had been neighbors for 14 months and almost something more for 3 weeks. The almost began at the Hawthorne Street block party. Nora had organized it to raise money for the old corner storefront her grandmother had once run as a bookshop. The place had been empty for 9 years. Its windows filmed with dust, its hardwood floors buckled near the back door. Nora dreamed of reopening it as a neighborhood bookstore and reading room, a place where children could stay after school and older residents could trade used novels instead of sitting alone. I had agreed to repair 6 donated bookshelves, then 8, then 12, somewhere between sanding the 3rd shelf and arguing with Nora about whether mustard yellow counted as cheerful or hostile. I realized I'd stopped thinking of the project as hers. At the block party, after the raffle and the speeches and the rain that arrived without warning, we ended up beneath the striped awning behind the empty shop. Everyone else had run for their cars. Nora stood close enough that I could smell rain in her hair. "You're staring," she said. "You have blue paint on your cheek. You put it there. You moved." I was standing still. "That sounds unlikely." She smiled, but neither of us stepped away. I lifted my thumb to wipe the paint from her skin. Her hand closed around my wrist. For one suspended second, the street, the rain, and every reason I had for being cautious disappeared. I kissed her. It was not dramatic. It was soft, surprised, and brief enough that we both had time to pretend it had happened by accident. Then Nora kissed me again, and accident stopped being a useful word. When we finally separated, she rested her forehead against mine. "Well," she whispered, "that was overdue." I should have told her then that I wanted to take her to dinner, that I had thought about her every morning when I heard her front door open and every evening when her porch light came on. Instead, I said the safest thing available. "We should be careful." Nora pulled back just enough to look at me. Careful because we're neighbors? Because this matters. That sounded better at the end. I mean it. I know. She studied my face. So what does careful look like? I did not have an answer. My last serious relationship had ended 2 years earlier when my fiancée, Melissa, returned the ring 3 months before our wedding. She said I was dependable in every way except the one that mattered most. I showed up to fix her car, carry boxes, and solve problems. I did not show up emotionally until the crisis was over, and I could speak in practical sentences. I had spent 2 years telling myself she had wanted too much. In quieter moments, I knew she had mostly wanted access. So Nora and I made an agreement built from equal parts hope and cowardice. We would not rush. We would not make promises just because a kiss felt good. We would keep working on the bookstore and see what happened. What happened was that she started having dinner at my house twice a week. We sat on opposite ends of my sofa and watched old mystery shows. She read children's book manuscripts sent by hopeful local writers, while I sketched furniture designs. Sometimes her feet ended up beneath my leg because they were cold. Sometimes I looked up and caught her watching me. Once, while washing dishes, she leaned against my back and wrapped her arms around my waist without saying anything. I stood there with soap on my hands, afraid to move, because the moment felt more intimate than the kiss. We did not call those evenings dates. That was the first mistake. The second mistake arrived on a Thursday afternoon in the form of my sister, Hannah. Hannah was 27 and engaged to a man named Derek Cole, a financial advisor who smiled like every room belonged to him. I had never liked him, which made Hannah defend him harder. For 3 years, I limited my objections to careful questions and the occasional repair of something Derek had broken and blamed on age. At 4:12 that Thursday, Hannah called me from a gas station 20 miles outside Richmond. "Can I come over?" she asked. Her voice was wrong, too flat. "Of course." "Is anyone there?" "No." "Don't tell Mom yet." I sat straighter at my workbench. "What happened?" "Please, Caleb. I'll explain when I get there." She arrived 40 minutes later with mascara on her cheeks, one overnight bag, and a bruise darkening beneath the sleeve of her blouse. Every useful word left me. Did he do that? Hannah looked at the floor. I reached for my phone. "I'm calling the police." "No." She grabbed my wrist. "Not yet." "Hannah, he didn't hit me." "Then what happened?" "He grabbed me when I tried to leave. I pulled away and hit the door frame." She swallowed. "I know how that sounds." "It sounds like you need to be done with him." "I am." The certainty in her voice lasted 3 seconds. Then she folded against me and cried into my shirt. I took her home, locked the doors, and listened while she told me about the accounts Derek monitored, the passwords he controlled, the friendships he slowly made inconvenient, and the argument that began when she said she wanted to postpone the wedding. She had not come for advice. She had come because she needed one place where Derek would not walk through the door. I promised her she had it. I also promised I would not tell anyone until she was ready. An hour later, she spilled coffee down the front of her blouse. She changed into one of my old work shirts, dropped her bra on the sofa while digging through her bag, and disappeared into the bathroom when someone knocked. That someone was Nora. Nora had brought over a pan of baked ziti the night before because she claimed my refrigerator contained ingredients, not food. She came to retrieve the dish and stepped inside before I could stop her, as she had done 100 times. Then she saw the bra. I could have lied. I could have said it belonged to my sister and left Hannah's bruised arm out of the explanation. But Nora knew Hannah. Not well, but well enough to ask why she was there, whether she was safe, and what had happened. Hannah had specifically asked for silence. In that moment, I treated her trust like a locked box, and Nora like someone standing outside it. After Nora left, Hannah emerged from the hallway wearing my gray work shirt and holding a wet washcloth against her face. "Was that Nora?" she asked. "Yes." "Why did she leave so fast?" I looked at the sofa. Hannah followed my gaze. Her eyes widened. "Oh no, it's fine." No, it is not. Go tell her it's mine. I can't explain why you're here without explaining what happened. You don't have to tell her everything, she'll ask. Then tell her I needed somewhere to stay. You told me not to tell anyone. I meant Mom. I meant Derek. I didn't mean, let the woman you're in love with think you're running a secret lingerie exchange. I am not in love with Nora. Hannah stared at me. Even while crying, my sister had always been able to produce devastating silence. Fine, I said. I care about her. You rebuilt 12 bookshelves for free. I donated labor to a community project. You drove across town because she said the bookstore door made a strange noise. It was dragging across the floor. You own 3 coffee mugs, and 2 of them have quotes about librarians. She leaves them here. Hannah lowered the washcloth. Caleb, you are emotionally exhausting. That was not the first time a woman had told me something similar. I called Nora. She did not answer. I sent a message asking if we could talk. She replied 10 minutes later. Nothing to talk about. We never said we were exclusive. The sentence was accurate and somehow more painful because of it. I typed 3 different explanations and deleted all of them. Finally, I wrote, "It isn't another woman in the way you think. I made a promise I can't break. Please give me a little time." Her answer came immediately. "You don't owe me an explanation, Caleb." She was wrong, I did. But owing someone the truth and owning the truth were not always the same thing. The next morning, Nora did not leave a mug on my porch. At the bookstore, she spoke to me only about measurements, invoices, and the grant application due in 12 days. The city's neighborhood renewal fund could cover almost half the renovation if we submitted architectural estimates, a business plan, letters of community support, and proof that the building could open within 6 months. Nora had spent a year preparing. I had promised to finish the repair estimate and produce a complete furniture plan. Normally, we worked side by side. That Friday, she kept a long work table between us. "The west wall shelves need to be lowered 2 inches, she said without looking up. "Why, accessibility?" I measured according to the plans. The plans were wrong. "Then I'll fix them. Thank you." Her politeness made me miss her sarcasm. I set down my pencil. "Nora, we have a deadline, I know. Then let's not complicate it. You think I lied to you?" She finally looked at me. "Did you?" "No. Did you tell me the truth?" I hesitated. "That's what I thought." She returned to the application. "You asked me to be careful with you. I assumed that meant we were moving slowly toward the same place. Apparently it meant you wanted the benefits of closeness without the inconvenience of clarity. That's not fair." "No. I was in your house 2 nights ago with my feet under your leg while you kissed the top of my head. Yesterday I found another woman's bra on your sofa. You told me to wait because you made a promise to someone I'm not allowed to know about. Which part should make me feel secure?" I had no answer. That did not involve Hannah. Nora closed her laptop. "I'm not asking you to betray anyone. I'm telling you that your silence has consequences even when you think you have a good reason." She walked to the front windows and began peeling old tape from the glass. I watched her shoulders, the careful distance in her posture, and felt the old instinct rise inside me. Solve the practical problem, wait for emotion to become manageable. So I picked up my tape measure. That was the 3rd mistake. For the next 4 days, we worked like polite coworkers. The shelves moved forward. We did not. Hannah stayed in my guest room. She called a domestic abuse advocate, opened a new bank account, and began making a list of everything she would need from the apartment she shared with Derek. She still refused to contact the police. I wanted to argue, but the advocate had warned me that taking control away from Hannah, even in the name of protecting her, could repeat the very pattern she was escaping. So I drove her to appointments. I changed the locks on my back door. I parked her car behind my workshop, where it could not be seen from the street. And I did not tell Nora. She noticed the car anyway. On Tuesday evening, I was carrying a rebuilt oak table into the bookstore when Nora looked through the rear window toward my workshop. "Who owns the silver Honda?" she asked. My grip tightened on the table edge. "A client." The lie came too quickly. Nora's face went still. I set the table down. "I shouldn't have said that." "No, you shouldn't have. It belongs to the person I made the promise to." "Another woman." "Yes, but not in the way I think." She nodded. "I remember." "Nora, please." She folded her arms. "Are you protecting her from me?" "No." "Are you protecting yourself from a difficult conversation?" The question landed too close to the truth. Before I could answer, the front door opened and a tall man in a camel-colored coat stepped inside. He looked around the unfinished shop with the confidence of someone evaluating a property he expected to own. "Nora," he said. "You weren't answering your phone." She stiffened. "Caleb, this is Grant Ellison." "Grant, my neighbor, Caleb Monroe." I recognized the name. Grant was the development consultant Nora's father had hired to convince her to sell the building. Grant shook my hand and smiled without warmth. "I've seen your work." "Very traditional." "Old furniture tends to be." His attention returned to Nora. "Your father asked me to bring the revised offer. It's 30% above the last one. I already said no." "You said no before the roof estimate. I know what the roof costs." "Do you know what it costs to run a bookstore in a neighborhood where half the people order online?" Nora's chin lifted. "It won't only be a bookstore. That makes the risk broader, not smaller." Grant placed a folder on the table I had just carried in. "The offer expires Friday." He glanced between us, noticed the tension, and seemed to enjoy it. "I'll call you," Nora said. "You always say that when you want me to leave. It keeps working." After he was gone, I looked at the folder. "You didn't tell me the offer increased." Nora gave me a tired smile. "I made a promise to my father not to discuss negotiations until I had decided. I deserved that." "Is that true?" I asked. "No. But it sounds responsible, doesn't it?" I leaned against the table. "Are you considering it?" "Maybe." The word hit me harder than I expected. "You've worked toward this for a year, and I may be about to spend every dollar my grandmother left me, take on debt, and fail publicly in the building that carries her name. You won't fail. You don't know that." "I know you." Her expression softened for half a second, then closed again. "Do you?" I watched her pick up the folder and realized we were having the same argument from opposite sides. She wanted access to my uncertainty. I wanted her to trust my certainty about her. Neither of us was offering what we asked for. The truth came out the next evening, not because I found the courage to tell it, but because Derek found Hannah. I was in the workshop finishing a walnut counter for the bookstore when I heard pounding at my front door. Not knocking. Pounding. "Caleb," a man shouted. "I know she's in there." I crossed the yard fast enough to leave the workshop door open. Derek stood on my porch with his tie loose and anger bright in his face. "Get off my property," I said. "I need to speak to my fiancée. She doesn't want to speak to you. You don't know what she wants. You've been filling her head with—" The front door opened behind me. Hannah stood in the hallway, pale but upright. "I told you not to come." Derek's entire expression changed. His voice softened into concern so smoothly that I understood, perhaps for the first time, why leaving him had taken her so long. "Hannah, baby, you're upset. Let's go home and talk privately. I am home for now. This is your brother's house. It's where I'm safe." He glanced at me. "Safe from what?" "We had an argument. You blocked the door. I was trying to stop you from driving while emotional. You took my keys. Because you were acting irrationally." Hannah flinched at the word. I stepped down from the porch. "You need to leave." Derek's jaw tightened. This is family business. So am I. A screen door opened next door. Nora came across the driveway wearing jeans, a navy sweater, and the expression she used when a parent yelled at a librarian. Calm, direct, and impossible to intimidate. "Is everything all right?" she asked. "Yes," I said. At the same time, Hannah said no. Nora looked past me and saw Hannah. Then she saw the bruise beneath the edge of my sister's sleeve. Understanding moved across her face, not all of it, but enough. Derek noticed her too. "This doesn't concern you." Nora stopped beside me. "You're shouting on a public street. You made it concern everyone with a window. I'm here for my fiancé." Hannah stepped onto the porch. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was clear. "I am not going with you. I am not marrying you. If you come back, I will call the police." Derek stared at her. "You don't mean that." "I do." He took one step forward. I moved between them, but Nora had already lifted her phone. "I'm calling now," she said. "You can explain to the officers why you ignored a direct request to leave." Derek looked at the three of us, calculating. Then he pointed at Hannah. "When you calm down, you'll realize what he's done." "No," Hannah said. "I'm finally realizing what you did." He left before the police arrived. The officers took a report. Hannah agreed to request a protective order the next morning. After they drove away, she sat on my sofa with both hands around a mug of tea. Nora remained near the doorway, uncertain whether she was welcome. Hannah looked at her and said, "The bra was mine." Nora closed her eyes. "I am so sorry," Hannah continued. "I dropped coffee on myself. I changed clothes. Caleb promised not to tell anyone I was here because I was scared Derek would find out." Nora looked at me. "You could have said it belonged to your sister." "I thought you would ask why she was staying here." "I would have." And I couldn't answer. "You could have said she needed privacy." "I should have." The room went quiet. Hannah stood. "I'm going to take this tea upstairs before I become the most uncomfortable person in Virginia." She paused beside Nora. "For what it's worth, he talks about you constantly." "Hannah." "He does. Usually while pretending he's talking about shelves." Then she disappeared up the stairs. Nora remained by the door. I wanted the truth to repair the damage instantly. It did not. "You were protecting her," she said. "Yes, I understand that. Do you?" "I understand the reason. That doesn't mean the way you handled me was harmless." I rubbed a hand over my face. "I didn't know what to say. You could have started with, 'I'm not seeing anyone else.' I thought that was obvious." Nothing is obvious when two people refuse to define what they're doing. There it was. The real problem, standing where the misunderstanding had been. I moved closer. "I'm not seeing anyone else." Nora held my gaze. "I haven't wanted to," I continued. "Not since before the block party, probably not since before I admitted it to myself." "That's not the same as choosing me." "No." The word hurt. But it was true. "It isn't." She looked toward where the red bra still sat folded on the arm, because neither Hannah nor I had touched it after Nora left. "I wasn't angry because I thought another woman had been in your house," she said. "I was angry because I thought I was the only one who had been invited into your life, and then I realized I didn't know whether I had been invited at all." I swallowed. "You have. Into the parts you can control. That's fair." She seemed surprised I admitted it. I took another step, leaving enough distance that she could decide what happened next. "I want to take you to dinner, a real date. I want to tell people I'm dating you. I want to stop using the word careful when I mean afraid." Her eyes shone, but she did not smile. "And when something difficult happens, I will try not to lock you outside it. Try. I'm 30 years old, Nora. I restore furniture. I'm not going to pretend one honest conversation turned me into a different man." That finally brought the faintest curve to her mouth. I appreciate the lack of false advertising. I can promise effort and the truth when it belongs to me. She considered me for a long moment. Then she stepped forward and took my hand. Dinner, she said. One date. After the grant application is finished. That's 5 days. You survived 14 months, barely. Her thumb moved once across my knuckles. And Caleb? Yes? If I ever find underwear on your furniture again, I expect a faster explanation. Reasonable. Even if it belongs to a relative, especially then. She laughed, and the sound released something tight in my chest. We did not kiss. Hannah was upstairs, Derek might return, and the grant deadline still waited. But when Nora left, she took one of my coffee mugs from the kitchen and promised to bring it back in the morning. It felt like more than forgiveness. The next 4 days were the happiest I had experienced in years, which should have warned me that life was preparing an invoice. Nora and I finished the grant package at my dining table. She wrote the business plan while I completed the construction budget. Hannah helped assemble letters of support and quietly corrected 3 of my spelling errors without comment. On Saturday, neighbors came to sign a petition. Mr. Bell, from across the street, brought photographs of the old bookshop from 1978. Miss Alvarez, who had taught second grade for 36 years, promised to volunteer for the after-school reading hour. The building began to feel alive before it had lights. Nora did too. She spoke about low shelves for children, large print sections for older readers, and a long communal table where people could sit without being required to buy anything. I watched her lean over the floor plan, hair falling across one cheek, and understood why Grant's offer frightened her. Selling would guarantee money. Opening the shop would ask her to put her deepest hope in public and let people measure whether it succeeded. On Sunday night, after Hannah went upstairs, Nora and I stood alone in the unfinished bookstore. Rain tapped the front windows. The walnut counter I had built stretched along one wall, still smelling faintly of oil and sawdust. "Come here," Nora said. I walked toward her. She took my hand and placed it on the counter. "This is real. It weighs 300 pounds. I'm confident. I mean the shop. I know. And that scares me. I know that too." She looked up. "You keep saying you know me. I'm trying to earn the right." The rain grew louder. Nora touched the front of my jacket, smoothing an imaginary wrinkle. "Our date is tomorrow. 7 o'clock. You made a reservation?" 2 days ago. Should I be impressed or worried? Both. She smiled. I leaned closer, waiting. When she did not step back, I kissed her. This kiss was nothing like the rushed surprise beneath the awning. It was slower, steadier, and carried the knowledge that we had already disappointed each other and chosen to remain. Nora's fingers curled into my jacket. My hand came to rest against her cheek. When we separated, she whispered, "That was not very careful. I'm learning." "So am I." My phone rang. Hannah's name appeared on the screen. I answered immediately. Her voice shook. "Caleb. Derek is at the apartment. He changed the locks. He says if I want my things, I have to come alone." Hannah had gone to the apartment with a police escort, but Derek had arrived first. The officer would prevent a confrontation. He could not decide which property belonged to whom. Derek was claiming nearly everything in the apartment was his, including furniture our father had built for Hannah when she graduated from college. "I'm coming," I said. Nora heard enough to understand. "What do you need?" "Nothing. I'll handle it." The moment the words left my mouth, her expression changed. "Caleb, I may be there all night. The grant review is at 9. My signed estimates are on the kitchen table. The presentation file is on my laptop. I can pick them up. I'll bring them. You just said you may be gone all night. I'll make it." She looked at me for one long second. "Go help your sister." I kissed her forehead, promised I would call, and left. At the apartment, Hannah stood beside a stack of boxes, while Derek argued with the officer about a dining table. He had emptied drawers onto the floor, opened sealed mail, and removed the hard drive from the computer Hannah used for freelance accounting work. Every time she tried to make a decision, he interrupted until she began doubting what she had just said. I focused on the practical tasks: photograph each room, list disputed property, find receipts, load what could be removed safely. I told myself I was helping. At 2 in the morning, Hannah sat on the kitchen floor and said, "I can't do this." I crouched beside her. "Yes, you can." "No, I mean I can't keep proving every object and every memory belongs to me." She looked at the half-empty apartment. "Let him keep it. He doesn't deserve it." "This isn't about what he deserves. I want to leave." I almost argued. Then I remembered the advocate's warning. "What do you need to take?" I asked. She pointed to a box of photographs, her grandmother's quilt, 2 framed prints, and the old cedar chest our father had made. We loaded those things. We left the rest. By the time we reached my house, it was 8:38. Nora had called twice. My phone had been buried beneath a moving blanket in the truck. I saw the messages as I ran inside. "Where are the signed estimates?" "Caleb, the committee moved our review to 8:30. Please call me." I looked at the kitchen table. The folder was gone. For one hopeful second, I thought Nora had picked it up. Then I remembered placing it in my workshop after making one final correction. I drove to City Hall with the folder on the passenger seat and arrived at 9:17. Nora stood outside the meeting room holding her laptop against her chest. Grant was beside her. He had one hand on her shoulder. She stepped away from him when she saw me. "I'm sorry," I said. "The review changed. I told you last night it might." "I didn't hear my phone." "The committee postponed the decision for 48 hours because the contractor estimates weren't signed. I have them. Now." Grant cleared his throat. "Nora, we can discuss the offer later." "I'll call you," she said. He nodded at me as he left. This time he did not look pleased. He looked inevitable. I held out the folder. "We still have 48 hours. Nora did not take it. I asked what you needed. Hannah needed me. "I know. I'm not angry that you went." "Then what are you angry about?" "You decided helping her meant shutting me out again. You could have told me the file was in the workshop. You could have asked me to present the estimates. You could have called from the apartment. You could have let me come with you." It was ugly. Derek was there. "And you think I only belong in the pleasant parts of your life?" "That isn't what I think." "It is what you do." The hallway was empty, but Nora lowered her voice anyway. "You said you would try not to lock me outside when something difficult happened. The first difficult thing happened before our first date, and you did exactly that. I was protecting you." "From what?" "Seeing your family in pain, being useful, knowing you don't have everything under control." I had no good answer. She nodded once. "Dinner's canceled." "Nora, I need to decide whether to accept Grant's offer. You don't want to sell." "No. No, but wanting something doesn't make it wise." She walked away before I could tell her that losing the shop would hurt the whole neighborhood. Before I could tell her that losing her would hurt me more. For the rest of that day, I did what I always did when emotion became unbearable. I worked. I repaired the cracked cedar chest Hannah had rescued. I signed the grant estimates. I prepared revised schedules. I found 3 places in the budget where I could reduce labor costs by donating more of my own time. None of it answered Nora's question. That evening, Hannah found me sitting on the workshop floor beside the cedar chest. "She canceled the date," I said. "I'm sorry. I was helping you." "Yes, I did the right thing." "For me, you did." Hannah sat on the floor across from me. "But you keep acting like doing one right thing excuses every other choice you make around it." I looked at her. You didn't have to choose between me and Nora, she continued. You chose to do everything alone. That's different. I didn't want you exposed. To Nora? Caleb, she stood on the porch with us. She called the police. She already knew. I didn't want to add pressure. Hannah gave me a sad smile. You decide what people can handle, and then you call it protecting them. Derek did that to me all the time. The comparison hurt enough that my first instinct was to reject it. Instead, I let it hurt. What should I do? I asked. Stop asking how to fix Nora. Ask her what she needs. I went next door. Nora opened the door but did not invite me in. She had changed into sweatpants and an old university shirt. Grant's offer folder lay on the table behind her. I'm not here to argue about the shop, I said. Good. I'm here to ask what you need from me. She blinked. Not what I think you need. Not what I can build or carry. What do you need? For a moment, she said nothing. Then she opened the door wider. I need to know whether I'm making this decision because I'm scared or because the numbers truly don't work. I stepped inside. Then let's look at the numbers. And I need you not to promise. Everything will be fine. I can do that. And tomorrow, I need you at the committee meeting before I arrive. I will be there. If Hannah needs you, I'll tell you. We'll decide what to do together. Nora searched my face. Together is not a word you get to use only when it's easy. I know. This time, I understood what I was saying. We stayed at her table until after midnight. The numbers were frightening, but not impossible. Grant's offer was generous because the developer wanted the entire corner, not because Nora's plan was foolish. With the city grant, a smaller community loan, and a phased opening, the shop could survive its first year without pretending success would come quickly. At 8 the next morning, I was outside the committee room with signed estimates, revised schedules, and coffee for Nora. The review lasted 40 minutes. Nora presented the plan without apology. She answered questions about revenue, staffing, accessibility, and risk. When the committee asked whether donated construction labor was dependable, I did not make a speech about believing in her. I gave them contracts, timelines, references, and a written commitment for my business. Then Miss Alvarez stood from the public seating area. Behind her were 23 neighbors, Hannah among them. They spoke about children who needed a safe place after school, older residents who had nowhere nearby to gather, and a building that had once held the neighborhood together. The committee approved the grant unanimously. Outside City Hall, Nora cried for exactly 6 seconds before laughing at herself. I wanted to hold her, but I waited. She stepped into my arms on her own. I'm opening a bookstore, she said against my chest. You are? I may be completely insane. Probably. She pulled back. And us? I took a breath. I love you. Her eyes widened. I'm not saying it because the grant passed. I'm saying it because I have spent 14 months building excuses around the truth. I love you. I also know loving you does not automatically make me good at letting you in. No, she said softly. It doesn't. I want to learn. I want the difficult parts too. Yours and mine. I don't want another almost. Nora looked at me for so long that every heartbeat felt audible. Then she touched my cheek. I love you too. But dinner first. I laughed. Tonight? 7. A real date, and if you disappear, I'm selling the shop to Grant out of spite. You would never? No. But I might paint the shelves mustard yellow. That is emotional abuse. She kissed me before I could say anything else. 6 months later, Bennett Books and Reading Room opened on a bright Saturday morning. The first customer was a 7-year-old girl who spent 20 minutes choosing between 2 books and finally bought both with money from her grandmother. Mr. Bell claimed the chair by the front window as if it had been reserved for him. Hannah ran the bookkeeping desk part-time while rebuilding her accounting business. Her protective order had been granted, and she had begun laughing without checking who was listening. Nora and I kept our separate houses, though we rarely slept under separate roofs. We learned that honesty was less like a door you opened once and more like a light you had to keep turning on. Sometimes I still tried to solve things before telling her they existed. Sometimes she assumed silence meant rejection. We got better at stopping sooner. One evening after closing, I found her kneeling beside the sofa in the bookstore reading room. She reached beneath a cushion and pulled out a small white bra. She raised one eyebrow. Caleb Monroe. My stomach dropped for half a second before a laughing woman rushed back through the front door. It belonged to a nursing mother whose diaper bag had spilled during story hour. After the woman left, Nora placed the bra in the lost and found box and looked at me. "So," she said, fighting a smile, "apparently I'm still not the only one." I wrapped my arms around her waist. "You're the only one with a key to my house, a shelf in my bathroom, and the authority to veto paint colors. That last one is the real commitment. It is." She kissed me beneath the warm lights of the bookstore we had nearly lost, because both of us were afraid of what choosing something might cost. The bra on my sofa had never proved I was unfaithful. It proved something more uncomfortable. Innocence does not erase the need for communication, and good intentions do not protect a relationship from silence. Trust was not asking Nora to believe me without evidence. It was giving her a place beside me, while the evidence was still incomplete. What would you have done in Nora's place? Wait for an explanation? Or walk away before getting hurt? Share your answer in the comments, and subscribe for more stories about the choices that change ordinary lives.